That's okay, Mandy. While she gets that up, do you want to start and just introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I am one of your hosts tonight. My name is Mandy Disney, and I am the area coordinator for the DC Northern Virginia area. And I am joined with the wonderful Trista.
And I am Trista Shinksie, our Director of Development. I am here in Jacksonville, North Carolina. That's weird. I still want to say San Diego. Um, and yeah, so I'm excited to do this. I was a teacher for 13 years and a reading specialist, and I know Mandy is working on her reading specialist certificate. So reading is something both of us are super passionate about. So yeah, do you want to get started?
Yeah. So tonight our topic is why it is important to read to children of all ages. Again, there's your hosts, me and Trista. Um, Next slide. We'll just get right into it. So we wanted to start off with a quick quote about from Jacqueline Kennedy that there are many little ways to enlarge your child's world. Love of books is best of all. I wanted to just start with this because it's a quick way to keep a reminder in our brains that it's a small thing that we're doing. It feels small, that 10, 15 minutes of reading aloud. But as we're going to discover on the next couple of slides, it's really not. There is so much more going on than just an entertainment time for your child. Next slide. So these are your, I guess, your five pillars of literacy. So your building blocks. When we talk about literacy, there's so many things involved, and immediately most people go to reading, which is what we have listed on top there. When we're reading with children, their vocabulary expands exponentially. We have some small facts throughout this where listed, as you can see, children who are read to daily will have heard roughly huge number of words. So, like, you can look at that and go, oh, wow. And then while those who are read to 5 times a day will have nearly 1.5 million words. And
Kindergarten.
yeah. And so, which is an amazing thought. Like, you're just reading to them, but they are retaining so many words. Going into the literacy piece of this, when a child is read aloud to, their imagination is fueled. So if you have read with a child, you can watch their face go from one extreme to the other as you're reading to them. They are just working through so many things in those tiny little brains of what's going on those pages. Their comprehension improves as you're reading to them because as they're hearing these wonderful stories, they're learning how to go through a story. Listening, it's studies show that reading aloud develops sustained attention and active listening. So as you're reading to that child, these funny voices, beautiful pictures, all of the things that you're incorporating into this read aloud, that child is holding on to. Communication. So shared reading experiences create natural opportunities for dialogue. We're going to dive a little bit more into this in a couple of slides, but the book opens up not just different worlds, different places, but a great way for you to talk to your kid about what is going on with them. Next slide.
So a lot of time when you think of reading, it's always like linked to reading scores and achievement in school, but it's really that is important, but also the social emotional benefits. And reading aloud, it's not just the academics, it's growing hearts, relationships, and growing minds. And one of the metaphors I really love is books are windows, doors, and mirrors, and it helps kids to understand each other, others. Um, Helps them to explore new worlds, and then also they can see themselves reflected in the stories that they read. And it exposes them to diverse characters, cultures of fostering and understanding of different perspectives, and really help kids develop compassion, empathy, and understanding that extend far beyond the classroom. And then also with the parent-child bond, it's something that builds one-on-one time that strengthens emotional connections, which comes back to our app and allowing service members to always have that no matter where they are with their children. And the physical closeness that you have when you are able to read together, and shared attention actually releases oxytocin, and which is the bonding hormone, and it makes children feel safe, loved, and valued. And in many families, that these moments become a cherished routine and part of something that they do and they remember into adulthood, even long after the stories, are finished. And we've seen that too with military family members who have come back to us now that they've had stories that they recorded 15, 20 years ago. And now their children are graduating high school or college, and they're coming back to see if we still have a copy of the recording because it's something that their child remembers and was a really, really great memory for them. So yeah, so whether a child's a baby, a teenager, and reading aloud is really one of the quickest and most powerful things to kind of nurture not just their mind, but their heart and your connection. Next slide.
So as I touched on earlier, I hear this more at events than anything else. Oh, I have a 10-year-old. I have a 15-year-old. They don't want to be read to. First, I look at them and go, well, have you started reading something? You'd be shocked at how they'll all of a sudden creep in and go, huh, what's mom do? Like, what's going on in there? I challenge them to do that. I'm like, hey, start, be a model. And that's a big portion of it is you're modeling love of reading, love of books. And then I also highlight these three very important things. Again, like I said earlier, communication. So I know personally, I have a 15-year-old. He doesn't open up about all kinds of things. He's not super talkative. I get a lot of grunts. We do, however, bond over books a lot. And it's the segue that I've found that works the best for us. If he's going through something and maybe mentions it, we can tie it back to a book. Or if there's nothing really going on and I know that he's reading something, be it a graphic novel or a comic book, which all still count as reading, I know that those are ways that I can touch base with him. I can look at those, I don't have to read them thoroughly by any means, but I can find something in them to go, oh, hey, I looked at that today and I saw blank, and it opens up a dialogue. And that's usually a fun one where he might dive in deeply into a storyline that I had no idea I was opening a door to, but it does provide that communication piece. Again, with the vocabulary growth, that doesn't stop at 5, at, 6, 7. They're going to continue to learn words. At my age, I still pick up words when I'm reading. There are times when I'm on my Kindle and I highlight a word that I'm like, I'm not sure I know what that is, and then look it up because, again, it's a fantastic way to grow that vocabulary. And the last big thing that I like to point out is that parents learn. We learn about what that child is into. So again, teenagers aren't often very communicative, but they may be reading something or into a subject matter, and you can supply them with a book that follows along with that. Say your child all of a sudden takes up a fondness of baking. Grab a cookbook. Let's work through it together. That is all building blocks of that parent-child bond, as well as you're learning about your child is learning about you, and a skill. So these are the three things that I really, really try to press to parents who tell me, oh, well, mine's too old to read aloud to. No, they're not, and they're still going to enjoy it because that bond that you already started as a young child is still there. Just this is a perfect way to continue building that bond. Next slide. So we
So
talked a
this
lot of
here, I was just gonna say this part is kind of my favorite part because a lot of times parents aren't sure of, okay, I have a baby that sits there and stares at things. Like, well, how do I read with them? Or my 2 or 3 year old is, they want to toss the book, flip it upside down. How can I do that? So these are just some techniques and strategies of how you can kind of start building that routine and things you can do to engage them. Um, yeah, this is my favorite part.
Yeah, and you can clearly see that's both our favorite parts because I started talking right when Trista did, because these are such good tips on improving your reading abilities. I tell a lot of our families, just be yourself. It's okay to trip up. You're gonna, because nobody speaks perfectly, but also have fun with it. Do the voices, be silly, enjoy yourself, because that's what grabs that child's attention. So we started, these blocks are all carved out into ages. And we started in numerical order. And with the 0 to 1, I thought it was a lot of fun to just point out all of these. It's like with the peekaboo, like Trista was saying, that teeny baby may not be staring at the book, but as they grow older, you've played peekaboo with a teeny baby. They will respond to it. So you can hide different characters in the book with your hand and just say, peekaboo, and you go, oh, there's the apple or whatever it is that they're playing peekaboo with.
We know that with the sound, like facial expressions and sounds, they respond to that a lot earlier than anything else. So that also kind of helps build that bond with you and making that eye contact and expressions and making sounds, because oftentimes that's what they make first. 2 to 3 is a really fun age to read with. They love predictability. So like lots of times with my girls, if say we're reading The Hungry Caterpillar, I let them what's coming next and fill in the final word of he was very, and then they go so hungry. And they like to fill in missing words or naming objects, using that to name objects and point to objects in a story to help build their vocabulary and understanding of the world. And then also helping, one thing we've been doing a lot with our 4-year-old is helping connect to her life. So if she's, struggling with sharing or we just moved, things with moving, helping her to read and understand and see herself in those stories and how those characters handle it. So 2 to 3 is a pretty fun age, I feel like, to read with. Um, and they're kind of just still exploring. And then Mandy, you can go ahead and do 4 to 7.
So with those 4 to 7 year olds, you're right. They start, that's where I feel like in this age range is where they're really building their reading. They're starting to recognize words and letters and how all of a sudden the puzzle comes together and they're like, oh, those letters make a word. And this is where that function starts to happen. We put word hunt on there, which I used to do with my preschoolers constantly. We would look for a certain sight word. Now, obviously in preschool, these are 3 to 4 letter words that we're looking for. But it's a ton of fun because that is engaging the child to a specific page. Again, in that age, we're asking open-ended questions. We're saying, what do you think will happen to the caterpillar? And especially if they've read it before, they're going to tell you. Or they might rattle off on something totally different, which is great. And you can discuss it further. And then guess meanings of new words. So at this age, all the words are new. They're going to see things that are like, oh, what does that word mean? And that's a great segue into a broader discussion of, oh, well, that word means this. You could also use this word or that word. And pronouncing those larger words and recognizing them is huge for this age because, again, they're laying down those building blocks for reading. In our next age range, the 8 to 10. So at this point, they're starting to feel much more comfortable with their reading. They're not perfect by any means, but they're um, past the well, not all the way, but they're getting better at being able to do it themselves and not necessarily relying on you to read. But when you are reading with them, you can do these tips and tricks to continue to keep their attention. So emphasizing your dialogue, making sure you're pausing at correct places, or if there's a suspenseful moment, changing your voice for each character. All of these things are effective for this age range. Asking them to use context clues to figure out those unknown words. So providing a little bit more of a challenge for this age range to go, okay, well, in that sentence, what do you think it means? Before we go off and look it up, let's talk about it. What do you see in that sentence that makes sense? And then the last bullet on that one, encourage
I could
visualization.
talk about that one because that's also a super powerful one. I used to, when I was a learning support teacher and a reading specialist. This is really builds comprehension, listening comprehension, and story recall. Encouraging them to actually visualize scenes. So just having them close their eyes and read it, and then they kind of tell you what they visualize and talk about it together, and it really strengthens their imagination. It strengthens their recall. So for this age, as kids are shifting, second and third grade to reading more and understanding more and might even struggle with comprehension, it really helps them. It's a lifelong strategy too, to kind of visualize that and map it out. And then moving into 10 and 13 is really now letting them choose books and giving them ownership over their reading. Sometimes the chapter books become long. So if you take turns reading it, that either they read a page or you read a page or a chapter and a chapter, that can model fluent reading for them of just not just the pacing of the reading, but the intonation of your voice and what you do when you come to dialogue and different, pieces of punctuation and really here, this is where you can continue with talking about the word meanings and context and expanding the vocabulary. And you can even start with um, Greek and Latin roots, prefixes, suffixes, and pointing those out and talking and having those discussions if they don't know the words of, okay, well, if we know that pre, what does this mean? And let's put it together and make sense of it. Um,
And then that last age range has to be my favorite. And I think, again, it's because I have one, almost two in that age range. And it becomes discussion topics. You get to talk about heavier things or interesting subjects that you can dive further into and go, oh, well, this amazing thing happened in history. Let's talk about it some more. So it provides fantastic conversations for you and your children. You can pick up different books and challenge them with these discussion topics. What do you think? What do you know about this already? Or do you know anything about this subject matter? And then have them annotate as they listen. So those words that are going to pop up inevitably, like I said, I still see words that I don't exactly know. Have them write them down so that then you can explore a little bit more. Things that really, really resonate with them, those powerful lines, and then have them remember those, and then you can talk about them. Why did that hit home for you? What made you feel so much about that line? Key plot shifts. That's a really great one as an educator because then you're really seeing the excitement in a story. Why do you think that was a key plot shift? What happened there in the story? Where is it taking us? So that you can really have these great in-depth conversations. And again, as Trista said, those chapter books can be long, but either you take turns reading aloud a chapter or a page, or, and I've done this where we'll read the same chapter one night or whatever, and then we'll discuss it the next day, or however it works for you. There's still ways to bond together over the same subject matter or book.
and tying that back to the app too, we actually had a family when I was in Camp Pendleton that the child was in chapter books and dad was in Djibouti, and they would take turns reading a chapter and sending them back and forth to each other through the app. So the child would actually record and then send it, and it was a way for them to still continue reading those chapter books together and share that and have that time together, which was super cool and really special.
Oh,
I guess
next
we
slide.
go to the
Yeah.
next slide and resources. Yeah.
So there are tons of literacy resources out there. I could have filled 100 slides with resources. These are some that we use, some I personally use, and obviously United Through Reading is on there. We have so many great links to resources there. We also have a blog that points out so many amazing things about reading, about our program, and about the effectiveness of of sitting with your child and reading. So there's so much to comb through on all of these. Reach Out and Read is one of our friends in the industry that utilizes children's books at medical appointments, and they have all kinds of studies that they're working on and showing on their website that tell you this is why we're doing this and this is how it benefits. GMU Leap, I have only started to dig through everything that's on there, but I highly recommend taking a look through that, especially if you're at a beginning point with reading with your child, or if you're at a point where you're struggling to figure out what next. That has so many things. And then Bookshare is something
Back
that,
up because that one is undervalued. So in that is an actual, if say you want to read a book, I don't even know, just any book. Sorry, my child, my helper here. Leo Leone's Color of My Own. They have a guide for parents of like, here's what this book is about. Here's some themes, and then here's the beginning. Here's some things you can do to set the stage, the middle, and Mandy, keep it.
um, yeah, so going back into that, they're like she's saying, middle and end, they have so many parent helpers, really. There's so many things to click through where you're like, oh, how could I engage them? They have it there. There's so many things. It is like Trista said, once she sent it to me, I have embarrassingly spent a lot of time just combing through not even a half of what they have. So it is, I highly recommend it. Definitely give it a look. And then the last one that I put on there was something called Bookshare, and it's a completely free for children who are facing some kind of either visual impairment or learning, some kind of special learning need that they might have. These books are designed for them to be able to read them. And when I say read, not necessarily themselves, but they have tons of popular children's books set in a way for to help children that have different needs when reading. So it's definitely worth looking through. And like I mentioned before, there are tons and tons of resources out there for parents. If you're stuck somewhere, or like I mentioned before, if you're reading that chapter book with your child and you missed a chapter, or you know, didn't have time to get through whatever you assigned each other, you can use a lot of resources on the internet to find questions to ask them, or what happened in chapter 13 of this book. You can utilize those things to come back and work with your child. So yes, I highly recommend using these, and there's just tons out there. Next slide. And this is our question and answer time, which I definitely invite anybody who has any questions about reading to their child to either ask now or in the chat, or on our um, next slide, we have our contact info. So I'm going to open it up if anybody has any questions.
I don't have a question per se, but I did want to share from someone else who loves reading and has a neurodivergent child, shared with me that audiobooks, so books on tape, if you will, but also what our app provides when folks are listening, it's kind of an audiobook setting, is that it is a valuable tool that helps to improve reading comprehension for those that may have dyslexia, because it's one of those things that it just reduces the fact that they're trying to read, like, what does this word say? What is this? And they're able to listen. So it frees up a little bit of brain space, if you will, to fully digest what's being said. And so it's helping them to comprehend. And so one of those benefits that really could touch on all age ranges, but something that we're providing regardless of the age of the child, whether it's a picture book or a chapter book. So I wanted to pass that along as definitely a tool to have for parents and caregivers alike.
Yes, definitely. And that is something that we hear from parents a lot. Oh, my child isn't, they aren't reaching their fluency. They're neurodivergent. They have a XYZ. You can listen, and I hear that all the time, and they shy away from our tables. And I'm like, no, wait, hold on, let's talk. Let's talk more about how this actually helps, because I know it's scary. I know whenever I had to tell a parent, hey, your child, we need to work on this. That is scary for a parent. But there are ways, and there are so many things to utilize, especially United Through Reading, to be able to bridge those gaps and help out as much as possible. So definitely use those resources for sure. And our last slide is just our contact info. And I think that wraps it up for us today.
I opted to stop sharing the slides only because I want to just kind of open up to if anyone has questions or tips and tricks that they want to add when it comes to reading with children of all ages. I have things to add, but I'm going to be quiet and let other people chime in.
Tanya, I was going to say, do you want to share the GMU site really quick?
So I can
Sure.
definitely.
Is that something?
I have it. Hold on. I
Yeah.
think.
And you should be able to share your screen as well if you want to do that. Or I can do it if you want to put it in the chat.
That's where I was gonna send it. Hold on.
That works. I will say, kind of to echo, Mandy, what you were saying, my children love to tell me about the books they're reading. And then they will also say to me, can we do this as an audiobook so that you're hearing it and we can talk about it in real time? And so definitely a perk there.
Yeah.
It just to exactly what you were saying, it opens the doors for communication because sometimes kids don't want to talk to you. Trista, do you have a tab in particular where you'd like me to go on this website?
Sorry, I scroll down. Oop, access to free literacy resources.
Help me out. Did I?
Up a little more, up.
Oh, yep.
Oops, sorry. Online resources for literacy English. Nope, sorry, back out.
Hang on. My Zoom thing got in the way. Let me move that. Is it the book library, maybe?
Yeah, book library.
Okay.
There you go. And you can just pick one of the books and open it up.
We're gonna go with chalk because there's a dinosaur.
So it's kind of a whole guide of before you read, get ready, during, and then after, and kind of helps set you up with that with the book with your child.
And this is available for all age ranges?
Yeah, if you go back out, you'll see it goes through, and then they also have, if right there, secondary genre. So those are more broken out by how to read that genre and ways to facilitate that reading of those and plans.
Well, that's fantastic.
Right, so we've got a few things in the chat about homeschooling. There are a lot of other programs for homeschoolers. That's becoming so widely popular in the military community, rightly so, because it provides continuity in education, which children thrive in. So there are tons. And also, as far as homeschooling and reading, that they go hand in hand. Tanya can probably speak a little bit more because you have personal experience on that. Um, but we definitely encourage our homeschooling families to reach out to us. We also work with one of our partners, um, and now the name has gone out of my head, but they do it's Military Homeschooling Association or something along those lines. But
Something like that.
I would any families that ask about that, I would definitely point them in that direction to help, because they are a great resource to dig through rules and each state what they need to do to set themselves up for success. Another question in the chat. Oh,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say, I would add that we have a lot of titles and are over 400 to choose from through the app that can definitely help to supplement a lesson of what you're doing. I know I have used a few, whether it's talking about geography or something in history. And so homeschool families have used that in addition to help build on that. And as you guys shared earlier, it takes you outside of your bubble.
And then another question was, do you feel that audiobooks accomplish the same together feel, / releases the same oxytocin that reading from a book hard copy? I will die on the hill that audiobooks count for everything. I know myself that I use them constantly because, again, I love reading, but there's not always time to just sit and curl up and get comfy. Especially as moms, we're constantly in the car driving to and fro. So, what better place to turn that on? And you can also find through Audible, there are tons of free kids' books that you can play while you're going to and fro. I would love to see a study on if it does those things actually, but I know with my kids, we can put on something and then again the discussions come. Or I can hit pause and go, okay, wait, that thing just happened. What do you guys think? Who is it? Especially if it's like a mystery or some kind of suspense, we can stop and talk about it. So I definitely highly recommend audiobooks on a personal level. And also on if that's how your child is reading, then it counts. They're putting forth the work, they are comprehending something. So just going back and making sure that whatever title it is that they're listening to, you chat with them about. You say, hey, what did you think about that? Is the best way to kind of put that all together. So yes, highly recommend.
And going with that too, with what they want to read, graphic novels. I know that that has become a point of somewhat controversy over the last maybe 10 years, that a lot of times parents feel like, okay, they're not real books. And the question of those comes up. I would get that a lot. And graphic novels are such a great way to open up the door into reading, kids excited about it. And lots of times there's nonsense words, which are words that are not real, that um, force them to decode. So they have to know those sounds to be able to read those words. They have to learn how to read dialogue. There's lots of inferencing there of looking at the pictures and adding that to what's going on. And graphic novels are such a great resource to help kids develop their comprehension and different things when it comes to the fluency and the prosody and different paces and things with reading, but also a great way to open up doors for them into the love for reading if that's what they enjoy.
I was just actually reading something the other day about I know that Harry Potter is now being illustrated. And that was kind of a battle for a lot of people because they're like, well, it's not a picture book, it's a novel. But if you look at it, the conversation or the study that I read was these graphic novels and books that are being fully illustrated like this are not only developing a child's love of that book and literacy, but also art. So they are looking at these beautiful pictures and they are gaining knowledge from them, but they're also gaining a respect for that art form because it is definitely an art form. So they are taking double doses away from that. Not only are they getting those words and inferences and vocabulary that they might not otherwise get, but they're also now learning about a whole other art form.
I did want to ask because I know Mandy and Trista, you both have children of different ages. What is there personal favorites when it comes to books that you like to read with your kids or that your kids say, this is it, we have to read this or you should read this?
All three of mine, so I have a 15, 12, and an 8-year-old. So this is a broad age. But all three of mine like the Spy School. So we've listened to that on car rides, like longer road trips. And then usually my 8-year-old falls asleep. So sometimes we pick stuff while, because she is the quickest. I'm in the car for like 10 seconds and she goes to bed. So we usually pick things that she is not interested in, or she either will be watching some kind of cartoon on a she's, or she can actually read in the car, which the other ones cannot. So we've listened to a lot of other things, and most recently we listened to the Hunger Games, which an 8-year-old, I don't highly recommend for an 8-year-old, but she started listening and all of a sudden was very into it. Lots of questions, lots of let's make sure we understand this is not real at all, like we are in a whole other dystopian fantasy world. But she comprehended more than I've ever thought she could for that type of book. So it's random what we find that all three like. But I definitely highly recommend Spy School because it's fun for all of them. And I feel like that's the only one that all three really got into. There are several different podcasts that are more mystery built. So again, with the story is really, and they're narrated by children. So the story is really well done. And again, another challenge to the children to, hey, who do you think did it? What do you think's going on? Where are they going? So there's several of those.
And Arlene had a really great question too. And she said that sometimes she sees parents who have concerns about their child wanting to read the same story over repeatedly and kind of what's happening there. And I think so. One of the things is that they're building their mastery and confidence. So they're moving from just listening to actually knowing. And lots of times when they hear that same story, they begin to anticipate the words, recall the sequence of events, and then they start to join in, and it gives them kind of a sense of accomplishment and control, which is kind of a motivator. So that's one part of it. But it's also for parents, one thing I like to encourage them is it's not a sign that they're stuck. It's a sign that they're learning because the repetition builds memory, it strengthens their language skills. It gives them the joy of mastery or succeeding at something when they can finally predict what comes next. They can fill in that word correctly and it's not so new to them. And, those favorite books are something that are comforting for them or giving them that sense of connection of do you remember when we read this story together? And just kind of, it's just helping them grow in different ways that sometimes you can't see. So I always encourage that repeated readings help in so many different ways.
Yeah, I echo the comfort portion of that. There's a lot going on when they are reading the same book. They obviously love it for reasons. There's something in it that they have bonded to. So I tell parents, don't be concerned about that. Just like everything, they probably are going to grow out of it and move on to the next book. But you can let them read that one over and over again. It's really okay. I know it gets boring as the mom who's having to read Very Hungry Caterpillar for the 400th time, but that is a bond that they have formed there.
Aaron
Um,
had a really good question too about how do you feel about the age group where they memorize pages but not necessarily the right words. My 4-year-old, who I know cannot read, will tell me his own version of the story. Do we correct them or keep the imagination running? So at 4, it's definitely the let the imagination run is the better choice always. But it's what's kind of cool about that is they're starting to demonstrate comprehension of the story, not just the recall of it. So when they're doing it in their own words or adding in like their own events, they're showing that they understand the plot, the characters, even if they're not using the events or the exact language or storyline, that they are understanding those elements. They're also practicing different storytelling skills, the expressive language. Um, and then like the confidence piece, like they can read, right? Because they see all these people reading around them, they're teachers all day. So for them, it's taking ownership over reading and a story, and it helps them become like just a foundation for enjoying reading. And like lots of times you could say like, oh, I love how you told that part. Or if you do like it's starting to get a little wild and you want to connect them back, you can say like in the book, Bear tiptoed past or into the cave. What happens in your story? Or one time you alternate, read the book, and then instead be the storyteller and kind of help them kind of navigate that together and still enjoy it.
yeah, I totally agree. I had parents all the time tell me, but they're not reading. That's not them reading if I don't tell them the right words. Oh, they're reading. They're doing it they are acknowledging that this is a book and there are words in it and that there is a story happening. So these are the building blocks. We have to remember that you have to start at one point. Your child is not going to become a voracious reader overnight. They're not going to put these sentences together and be fluent in reading for a while. It's going to take some time, but a huge building block is telling those stories.
So I have a question for both of you. We touched a lot on kind of the younger kids and they're growing and they're exploring, but I'm sure both of you have heard it, as probably has everyone on the call. You have adults who will say, well, my kid doesn't like to read, or kids will come up and, hey, would you like a book? No, I don't like to read. Why, personal opinion, so not professional there, but personal opinion, why do you think a child may say, I don't like to read? And how could we change their mind?
That's a tough one because parts of me, just from my personal professional experience, if that makes sense. So as a teacher, a lot of times it was that I would turn around and say, well, especially if it was the parent that said, oh, they don't like to read, so I'm not going to force it on them. Do you like to read? Because oftentimes, especially at these early ages, so at 3, 4, and 5, if they're not being read to, they don't have any way to know if they like reading or not. They might come to school though, and we're doing circle, and I'm reading this beautiful book that I've picked based on whatever's going on in our classroom, and they are in it. They are just in love. And so then I go back to that parent and go, well, they really love books. Like I promise they really love them. I invite them to watch, so that's a hard one but oftentimes it is that the parent doesn't enjoy reading. But I
As I
have
say, lots of times for parents, school may have been a difficult, school just may have been a difficult experience for them. And if they have some kind of, they equated reading, they're not somebody who likes to sit down and be patient and wait, and they equate that with sitting down, or at an early age they adopted the I'm not a reader part of their image. It reinforces that belief, which then they become resistant to kind of reading with their child. And a mismatch, like Mandy's saying, a mismatch of interests, finding something that does interest them, and maybe they just never had that moment with a book. So it's hard, and I think with that I've always navigated that with questioning of, first emphasis, I get it, sometimes not every book is for everyone, but also then what topics do you enjoy learning about? What do you like, real stories? Do you like fake stories? Do you like animals? And start looking at like shorter formats, or buddy reading. One thing I used to love, our one library did when I was in Pennsylvania, was they had little therapy reading dogs, and kids could just go. So kids who had a hard time and struggled with reading, or even just kids who are shy, they could go to the library and they could read with these golden retrievers, because they have no judgment. And it's actually, I've seen it now in the news, some places have done it at animal shelters, because then the animals are getting the interaction and stuff. So just finding different ways to make it fun, not a chore or an obligation, and something maybe that they can enjoy.
And also making sure those parents know not to focus on, they don't have to be perfect. I know that, and as a parent, we get caught up in these levels or where they're supposed to be, a score on a test. And at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, let's back up a little bit. We don't need to focus solely on that. Let's figure out what the interest is, and then we can work on those things. And then just working with that parent, because like Trista said, some parents don't read. That's not their thing, and you're not going to change their mind. But if that child seems interested, though, because I've had several parents talk for the child, oh, they don't read, they don't like it. But you might be like, oh, well, okay, because that happens. They might just walk away. But other times the child might still be lingering about, and you can try. You obviously don't want to force anything or step on anybody's toes, but you do want to make sure that you can communicate with that parent. Okay, well, you can have it. Like the best way to open a book is to have the book. So I always like to tell people, access to books that's why it's so important, because if you don't have them, then you're definitely not going to read them.
I love that. And Arlene made a comment in the chat that said, she has a nephew who loves reading the books he chooses, but loathes the assigned reading at school. And one of the things I love to share with both parents and parents and kids, there we go, is that the variety that we offer, the board books through chapter books, there's something I say for every age and stage and interest that a child goes through, because one day they like dinosaurs, and then the next day it's bugs, and then it's all about pirates or whatever. And I feel Unite the Reading does a really great job of trying to find something for everyone. And exactly to Trista's point, where not every book is for every person, but there's a book out there for everyone, depending on their interest level. And so I think you guys highlighting that, look at all that there is, and maybe you just haven't found the right book yet to get the child excited, or even the parent.
That's something too, I think maybe in some of the areas as we're expanding with it, looking into, I know there a lot of base libraries and places have book clubs available that are like just a low stakes, low pressure. So there could be one like for that age group that you can attend with your child. And that's kind of good, because it's a supportive environment for the parent and the child, to kind of explore and meet other kids, and lots of times for parents too, to meet other parents that are going through the same struggles with their child, or navigating that is, just as empowering and valuable too.
you know, you guys reminded me of something, and then I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be quiet. But when my aunt came to visit me and she learned more about our program, she said to me, "This is truly amazing that you're encouraging parents or adults to read with the children in their lives, because my parents did not read to me at all, to any of us growing up." She said that was not a thing that we did. And, you know, she was born in the 50s. So she said, it's just not something that we ever did. And looking back, I don't know that my mom read to me, but we did the books on tapes. You know, when you hear the sound, turn the page, like that's how I learned to read. And I think United Reading does a nice job of educating and helping to get that shift going, where we're encouraging you to read with children because there is value in it. But if you look at generations of the past where it maybe was not a common thing, and so if you weren't starting that kind of, Mandy, to your point, where kids didn't see it happening to know to mirror it and kind of discover their love of reading, that it could present some obstacles in the future.
Arlene pointed out a very good point. Physical books may not be right for every kid or adult. So, and that is the beauty of it. And that's why, reiterating what we were saying earlier, encouraging. I mean, if you have a child in your life that the only thing they want to read through is a cookbook, read with them, because that is still reading. They're learning something, then cook those things with them. So you're building, that's a whole huge building that you're doing there. You're not just reading, you are also developing a skill with them. So there, when we say there's a book for everybody, there's some kind of literacy format for everybody, be it a physical book, audio book, what have you. I think that pretty much wraps us up, though, unless anybody else has any comments or questions.
I think we are all set. Thank you, ladies, for a wonderful presentation and more things to arm not only staff, but our volunteers who are out in the field, of things to share with those who stop by the Unite the Reading booth, and to that we share with our community partners and such. So thank you for taking the time to really put that together. It was a fantastic presentation. I'm going to stop the recording, or attempt to, and I think that's all that we have.
Thank you. It was fun.